All the Way to the River by Elizabeth Gilbert. On her 54th birthday, 5 years after the death of her partner Rayya, Elizabeth Gilbert is awakened by a vivid visitation from her. Rayya's energetic presence fills the room, delivering a torrent of love, encouragement, and final instructions. She urges Gilbert to live her own life, stay sober, and write the unvarnished truth about their relationship and their mutual struggles with addiction. This visitation becomes the catalyst for the book, a promise to tell their story with complete honesty. The narrative then introduces Rayya Elias, a Syrian-born, Detroit-raised force of nature. A musician, filmmaker, and hairdresser, she's described as a charismatic glamour butch dyke with a punk rock edge and a heart of gold. Rayya is a survivor of heroin addiction in the streets, a fierce protector of her friends, and a woman who lives by her own rules. She is her own worst enemy, yet a foundational presence in the lives of all who know her. Gilbert describes Rayya as the person she fell into, the way a whitewater rafter falls off a boat and gets sucked into a whirlpool. Gilbert first met Rayya in 2000. At the time, Gilbert was a 31-year-old writer in a conventional marriage, feeling lost and on the verge of a personal implosion that would later be chronicled in Eat, Pray, Love. Needing a haircut, she was sent to Rayya, who worked out of her graffiti-adorned walk-up on Avenue C. Rayya, with her leather pants and gravelly laugh, was everything Gilbert was not. During that first haircut, Rayya spoke openly about her sobriety, her past as a junkie, and her fierce determination to live life on her own terms, encapsulated by her mantra, "Get your own life." Gilbert also introduces herself as an addict, not of substances like Rayya, but of love and sex. She describes this process addiction as a lifelong, desperate search for external validation from romantic partners, a pattern that has caused immense harm to herself and others. She explains that while Rayya was addicted to drugs, Gilbert was addicted to people, a codependency that would define their relationship. At the time of their deepening friendship, however, Gilbert did not recognize her own illness. Years passed. Gilbert's life transformed after her divorce and world travels. The success of Eat, Pray, Love brought her fame and immense wealth, which she, in her codependent state, began to give away manically, trying to save everyone, as a way to soothe her own deep-seated anxiety. During this time, Rayya's life took a downturn. A long-term relationship ended, financial struggles mounted, and she was left lonely and in pain. Hearing that Rayya was struggling, Gilbert's rescuer instincts kicked in. She offered Rayya her recently purchased sanctuary, a converted 18th century church in rural New Jersey, as a rent-free place to live and heal for the summer. Rayya's stay, intended to be temporary, stretched into nearly 9 years. As Rayya became a fixture in Gilbert's daily life, Gilbert discovered the depth of her greatness. She possessed a unique social magic, an ability to cut through pretense with disarming honesty and humor, making everyone feel at ease. Her presence had a profound effect on Gilbert, dissolving the constant fear and vigilance that had been the background noise of her entire life. For the first time, Gilbert felt completely safe. This feeling of safety solidified a deep, imprinting bond. Gilbert came to depend on Rayya as her confidant, her advisor, and her emotional stabilizer. To keep Rayya from returning to New York City, Gilbert proposed that she stay at the church to write a memoir about her incredible life. This offer, masked as a generous artist residency, was born of Gilbert's desperate need to keep her source of safety close. Rayya accepted, and their lives became increasingly intertwined. They were a constant pair, traveling the world together for Gilbert's work. Though their relationship remained platonic, their profound connection was an open secret, a love story hiding in plain sight. Gilbert, committed to her marriage, lived a secret life of intense, unspoken love for her best friend. It was during this time that Rayya began secretly drinking, her rationale a masterwork of an addict's justification. She claimed a doctor prescribed Angostura bitters for her chronic stomach pain, conveniently ignoring its 44.7% alcohol content. The bottles of bitters became a constant presence, a clear sign of a brewing relapse that Gilbert, in her own state of denial, chose to overlook. In 2013, both women were at a professional peak. Rayya's memoir, Harley Loco, was published to critical acclaim, and Gilbert's novel, The Signature of All Things, was a bestseller. They toured together, their deep friendship a subject of public fascination. But beneath the surface, Gilbert was cracking under the strain of her secret love, and Rayya was escalating her drinking, eventually staging a reverse intervention story to justify drinking wine openly. She pushed away sober friends who questioned her choices, creating an insulated world where her behavior went unchallenged. In April 2016, a week after her 56th birthday, Rayya was diagnosed with terminal pancreatic and liver cancer and given 6 months to live. The news shattered Gilbert's world. In a moment of stark clarity, she realized she could not let Rayya die without telling her the truth. She ended her marriage and confessed her love to Rayya, who responded, "I feel like a cage just opened in my heart and 1,000 white doves flew out." Their first night together as lovers was a tender, inevitable culmination of years of unspoken intimacy. The cancer diagnosis, perversely, brought a sense of wild liberation. Rayya refused chemotherapy, opting to live her remaining months balls to the wall. They plunged into an ecstatic, high-octane romance fueled by love, drugs, alcohol, and the adrenaline of a ticking clock. Gilbert abandoned her own life completely, pouring all her resources into fulfilling Rayya's every last dream, from recording albums to buying a Rolex and a Range Rover. They lived in a penthouse apartment, high on the powerful cocktail of their finally consummated love and the complete absence of future consequences. The high, however, could not last. The reality of the cancer's progression and pressure from family forced Rayya to relent and try a 3-month course of chemotherapy. The treatment was brutal, transforming her into a physically and emotionally ravaged patient. This period was a crucible for their love. Gilbert became a devoted caregiver, tending to Rayya through agonizing nights of pain, nausea, and paranoia. They developed rituals of comfort, telling epic stories about the brown-eyed peoples and the blue-eyed peoples to get through the darkness. Gilbert, the angel, found a sacred purpose in her tireless service. After the chemo ended, they enjoyed a brief, beautiful remission before the cancer returned aggressively. Rayya's pain became unbearable, leading to the reintroduction of opioids. The morphine was a hello old friend, quickly reigniting the dragon of her addiction. The relapse was swift and catastrophic. Morphine escalated to fentanyl, and soon cocaine was added to the mix. The vibrant, heroic Rayya vanished, replaced by a paranoid, abusive, and manipulative junkie. Their penthouse became a dungeon of despair. Gilbert, sleep-deprived and trapped, became the classic enabler, buying the drugs and even procuring clean needles, all in a desperate attempt to hold on to the love she was losing. Her own life became completely unmanageable. The breaking point came when, in a fit of exhaustion and rage, Gilbert plotted to murder Rayya. The shocking lucidity of her plan, followed by Rayya's eerily perceptive warning, "Don't you start plotting against me now," jolted Gilbert into a moment of profound realization. She understood she had reached the end of her power. Following a divine feeling instruction, she left the apartment and began calling friends for help. This was her surrender, the admission of her own powerlessness. An ill-conceived intervention followed, which ended in disaster. Rayya, cornered and high, unleashed a torrent of venom, culminating in the heart-shattering words, "I wish we'd never gotten together." Devastated, Gilbert finally left. She sought refuge on a friend's couch and, more importantly, in the rooms of 12-step programs for codependency and love addiction. Rayya, now out of options, called her ex-girlfriend Stacy in Detroit, who agreed to help her detox and die with dignity. Stacy, with firm boundaries and deep love, successfully managed Rayya's final months, weaning her off the street drugs and creating a peaceful environment. Gilbert, from a distance, had to contend with jealousy and feelings of failure before accepting her new humbler role. When she finally reunited with Rayya in Michigan, Rayya was frail and dying, but she was sober and lucid. In a moment of profound honesty, they spoke about the damage that had been done. Rayya, unable to undo her actions, asked for forgiveness. They reconciled, their love finding a new, quieter form in the face of her impending death. Rayya died on January 4th, 2018, surrounded by Gilbert, Stacy, and her ex-wife Gigi. Her death was not peaceful, but a defiant, furious battle to the very end. Yet the moment she passed, her face transformed into an expression of ecstatic, satisfied peace. After Rayya's death, Gilbert's own addiction, which had been waiting patiently, roared back to life. She fell into a disastrous romantic binge which ended, as it always had, in a complete and merciless devaluation of self. This final crash was her true bottom. She returned to the rooms of recovery, this time with full surrender. She claimed her seat as a sex and love addict and committed herself to the 12-step program. The final part of the book details Gilbert's 5-year journey of sobriety. She gave up alcohol, drugs, and, most importantly, romantic entanglement. Through celibacy, working the steps, and making amends, she slowly began to heal. She discovered a new, peaceful way of living, focused on taking care of herself and her wounded inner child. Her relationship with the deceased Rayya transformed from one of tormented lover to that of a cherished best friend, whose difficult end provided the life-saving lesson she needed. The book concludes with Gilbert living a quiet, sober, and contented life in her church, finally at home with herself, her God, and the loving memory of her friend.